Hi everyone, welcome to webinar 55. And it's been a minute. I know that we last talked to you guys, I think last month. Just got kind of busy here in the office, but we're glad to be back. And what a good way to start then with learning about digitizing and pre-press and all that good fun stuff. Just as a kind of reminder, last time we had our webinar, we really covered more of the marketing side. And so if you're interested in that, we do cover a bit of like technical stuff like today, business stuff like we did last time, and also some of the Lumaprints relevant items as well. But for today, we are going to cover digitizing and pre-press. But before we do that, I also have another small announcement. So this is kind of like reaching out to all of you guys. If you have an online store and you work with us, then we are reaching out to people. If you're interested, we are thinking about doing a small segment of our webinar for sometime between now and October, just really visiting people's websites that they turn in, and we could review their websites, offer suggestions, point out what can be improved upon, or even as well highlight the strong suits of your website. So if you're one of our customers and you're interested in having us review your website, we're going to be doing that sometime in the future, and you could email us at hello@lumaprints.com with your email that you use for your business for Lumaprints and the website that you want us to review. So as long as you have those two things, we can then verify that is indeed your website and we can go ahead and review it and offer suggestions. I think it's not only helpful for the customer who is, allowing us to visit their website and offer feedback, but it's also useful for others to also watch as we see what we as kind of people who are on the marketing end and also see what helps with sales, what helps you improve your website. And it could be small things, it could be things that you never noticed. And having a second opinion, I think, is always great. And we're just offering a small little thing where if you're interested in this, great. If you're not interested, then don't worry. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some who will be submitting their websites, and you can kind of in turn, vicariously take their advice for your own website. So that is something we're planning to do. Feel free to email us again, hello@lumaprints.com. And with that being said, we can go ahead into today's topic. So for today's topic, I know that in the past we talked about pre-press, and this is specifically pre-press for physical art pieces that then are digitized and how to prepare for digitizing your artwork and then to have it printed. Today, more so, we're going to talk about how if you are a digital illustrator or if your art is, at the forefront, made in a online program, how can we ensure that the quality is up to snuff and it will translate well when it's printed? So we're going to cover that today and offer some tidbits. I know that for the most part, if you are educated in digital design or understand the pre-press process, you know that there's a lot of things that you're already taking into account to make a really high quality digital print. Here's so more. I want to cover how you want to, yes, create a really high quality image, sure, but also make sure it's applicable for printing particularly, because I know that with some digital designers, you probably design for social media or for designs that are enjoyed simply as what they are, which is digital pieces. So I know that when we then enter kind of pre-press territory, there might be just some stuff you need refreshers on, or if you're not aware of those processes, then this is a great introduction to that. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Um, First things first, let me go ahead and share my screen. Just as a first introduction and kind of just to ease you guys into what is like digital art and how it translates into printing, one of the first key things that I think is important to dispel is that what you see on the screen is not always going to be what is seen on print. And oftentimes, if you've only seen your images digitized and you don't really work on physical mediums, people are often curious as to why there might be a stark difference. Maybe something is not as vibrant, not as bright. And, if you're a digital artist, you kind of get acclimated to how your images look when they're at these very bright screens with these very colorful hues from your computer. The thing is, at the end of the day, it's not always going to be that way on paper or on canvas or even metal, as a matter of fact. So just keep in mind that For the most part, the translation between the computer and a physical print is not always going to be one to one. One of the easiest and quickest advice we give to our customers is that honestly, if you lower your brightness down significantly on your computer or on your laptop or on your phone even, that's when you'll be able to see a comparable version of your image to what it will look like printed. So for me myself, when I want to see how something might look digitized, one, I make sure my monitor is calibrated, which there's a whole technical topic right there in of itself. But if you ever want to check in on your monitor's calibration, feel free to look for your monitor's specific model and make and when it was made and see if they offer free calibration programs for it. But for the most part, just ensure that you're working on a calibrated monitor, one, and two, lower the brightness. And I like to just lower it by 50%, which doesn't sound like much, but it does do a world of difference to help me visualize what my art prints will look like. And so by virtue of doing that, you'll be able to see a pretty good representation of your artwork. That and some other stuff that we'll cover when it comes to the resolution and also the image quality. And the reason why it's important just to prepare your image in preparation for print and not just, finish your drawing on, your digital program of your choice and then print it out. But there is a pre-press process that I think every artist should be somewhat aware of, and it'll just help you for future, reference, be able to see how your art look translates one to one or as close to one into the physical print. And it will help you execute your vision properly. And when you choose the right materials as well, such as what we offer here, which is fine art paper prints, canvas, or metals, but depending on your artwork and the stylings of it, what will translate best into I will say the physical form, it honestly all contributes to really executing a strong visual of your art and thus for being strong for your customers who want to perhaps buy it and want to be impressed by your artwork and not hopefully disappointed when they see something awesome on screen and they see something then lackluster on, paper. So just take into consideration that, you want to put some time and effort into pre-press and have sort of a system going down so you make sure that your art is physically printed in the best way possible. And speaking of, so we're going to talk about more of the technicalities of how to make sure your images are print ready. And honestly, I think that the first start of it is having a high DPI and also having large dimensions or dimensions that fit the image size that you're looking to provide for your customers or for the artwork in general. We'll go a bit more into exporting of your art as well. And for further context, I am working out of Photoshop, which is most people's program that they use for digital design anyways. But that isn't to say programs like Clip Studio Art, Medibang, and even Procreate have similar interfaces. So please keep that in mind. There are free programs such as Medibang and the like, and there's probably some online sources as well. So keep this in mind when we're talking about exporting art and things of the like. My assumption is that if you're already doing digital design, you probably have one of these more useful programs. And the one I tend to see amongst people is either Photoshop or Clip Studio Art. So keep in mind that when we're talking about this, the interfaces are going to be pretty similar, and you can kind of use the advice I provide on Photoshop for your program that you use. So when it comes to the large DPI and large dimensions, I do want to make note that even though you might have a DPI and even if your image translates to have the right dimensions or the dimensions that are large enough for your image, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a good image. And I kind of want to show an example of that. So let me go ahead and change my screen one moment. So here I have, just confirming with Sarah first. Can you see the image? All right, perfect. So here you can see I have the image, and this is an image by one of the artists that we have in our company, and they did a really good job. This is a completely digital painting. I know it might not look like it at first glance, looks like a painting, but they rock and they do really cool art with for us. Um, but I just wanted to show you what a high quality image looks like versus something that if you were to work out of a low resolution, it might not translate well into the print ready print. So keep this in mind. So here, this is what I would consider a great example of a good high digital, high resolution art. And let's look at the specs. opening up the properties menu, you can see it is a 30 by 30 or 30 by 40 rather, with a resolution of 200 dpi. That's fantastic. Now, right now, from like a bird's eye view, if you will, this looks like a high quality image. And so this is, perfect. Now we go into this one, and it's very similar in appearance, and it also has the same specs. 30 by 40 with a 200 dpi resolution, which, by the way, for reference, 200 or 300 dpi are great resolutions to work out of for printing purposes. Honestly, if you are familiar with digital and also online spaces, 72 is what you often tend to see, but that is for compression and saving space on websites. So just make sure that when you are working out of your digital designs, you keep your raw image first, save that for pre-press, and then if you need to upload it furthermore onto your online website or for your client online, or you want to share it on social media, it's going to compress to 72. So make sure you don't save that image because it's not going to be the best quality. So keep that in mind. But the reason why I show these to have the same spec, you might see some slight variation, but you just don't know what it is yet. This is the high quality version, and then this is the low res version. And um, I know which one is high resolution, I know which one is low resolution, but in order to really know how you can ensure that your image is perfect and ready for printing, you're going to have to get a physical ruler and we're going to do the ruler test. I also talked about this in the webinar that we talked about digitizing your physical artwork, and the rule still applies here. You want to have basically a visual of what your images will look like once printed in terms of scale. And the best way to do so is to align basically your online or in-program rulers and measurements to a physical ruler. So here I have a ruler and I'm going to measure it to each inch on my physical computer. And I here, for example, just to highlight, here I have my inches up here and on the side as well. And I'm going to use that to measure up my image as needed. So please do so when you're also reviewing your images so you can actually see what it's going to look like in person. Gives you a great preview. And so for reference here, this is no way, 30 inches long in person. So here at best it's like 6 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in more and more, and I kind of did this earlier, so I know it's roughly 45 zoom um, percentage. That gives me a relatively accurate measurement of what I have on my computer and on my ruler. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure, and I am bringing my ruler up to my computer, and this is what the to scale image looks like. So once it's printed out, this is what the details are going to look like from my visual eye. So this is where I take the opportunity as the person reviewing the artwork for printing. I don't not only like look at one part of the image, but I look at the totality of it. So I do a little scan over. I looked up and down, just looking at all the details. And as you can see here, the details are really beautiful. There's a softness to this image that lends itself really well, and it just looks fantastic. And I'm going through the whole image because I want to make sure every detail is shown well and is not blurry, or maybe you'll notice there might be some, rough marks in your own artwork and you just want to buff those out or do what you need to improve that quality of a specific section. But here looks great. Our artist did a really good job in making the details really nice with beautiful texturing and some editing here and there, but looks great. I'm going to do the same with the other image. And this is what I would consider a low res image because while it looks fine here, I'm going to put in the same zoom because it's the same dimensions, of course, of 30 by 40 with a 200 dpi. So when I zoom into the same scale as the previous one, now you're noticing like it's starting to look a little fuzzy. It's starting to look a little noisy. And that's because this image was at a low resolution, and I tried resizing it to my image size that I desire, which is a 30 by 40 with the DPI I also desired. But say this image started off as a 9 by 12 with a 72 resolution, and I brought it back up to this dimension, it's gonna look, well, not its best, to say the least. As you can see, colors have flattened. It's now crunchier. The texture has lost itself a bit here. And while the image is still pretty strong, don't get me wrong, like someone could say that this is a stylistic rendering of this image. I don't think in comparison, this image is going to be as strong as, our original one, which looks, again, softer. The colors look more subtle in their transitions, and overall looks like a strong image in comparison to this one, where you'll notice there's a stark difference. And so just keep in mind that your image, even if it has the specs that we are asking for, which is 200 to 300 dpi, with the dimensions of what you plan to print, that doesn't always equate that it's going to be a high quality image. So as digital designers and as digital illustrators, it's important to start with high specs from the get-go, and then if you need to have your image ready for online spaces, then feel free to create two versions of the image, right? One for the digital space or online space. So making sure that people don't steal your high resolution image at the end of the day. I understand that. So lowering it to 72 dpi as needed for your digital or social media or your website, but also making sure you keep a raw version of your image that will be great for printing and pre-press. And, speaking of, just making sure you have a good pre-press image, exporting is also just as important. And I think that when you export your image, it's not just a matter of saving the image as is, because it might be a really high file and it might exceed the 100 megabytes that we allow for on our website. But I always suggest just exporting the image. Of course, a quick note for us as Lumaprints, we do print out of our printers with Adobe RGB. So feel free to go ahead and convert your image to Adobe RGB to ensure that I myself made a quick action item of that. So I just have to click change to Adobe RGB and I'm good to go. And then I could save it as is, saving my image. But the important part is also to export the image. That way you can get a good review of what your image is going to look like when it's saved and when it's ready for printing. So I'm going to go ahead and go to export and then export as. And it's going to bring up my image and all the dimensions and the sizing. And as you notice from the get-go, at least on my first look at this, it's significantly brighter. And that's because Adobe Photoshop likes to give you a suggested color space, and I am not interested in having that color space of sRGB. So what I'm going to do is click that off, and that should equate my image back to where it was, which is my preferred color here, which is a lot more softer and not as bright as they wanted it to convert it to. And then when we go to quality, I think that you should go to great, if not between very good and great. Don't go any lower than that because you might lose some of the quality. I'm going to go to here and it's going to save it at a higher megabyte um, I would say size. So just keep that in mind. And now turned from 1.8 megabytes to 21.1 megabytes. And that's just because of all the details that we need to account for. And if you were to go back to good, the reason why it lessens in size is because it is compressing the image as we speak. So we do not want that. We definitely want to stick with a higher image for your printing purposes. So once that's done, you can then go ahead and save it. So that's a quick review of how to properly digitize or properly prepare your digital images for printing. But let's go ahead and move back to my presentation. Okay. And just so uh, now that we kind of talked about the technical stuff regarding your artworks and how that's going to look like and what things you need to put in place, we can now talk about picking the right surface for your art. And this is more of the fun part. We kind of talked about the technical stuff, but now we want to kind of cover like what type of art medium your image will lend to once printed. And so here at Lumaprints, we have various types of options that you can review and see which one's the best one for your art. Um, And not only that, but it's again to enhance the visual appearance of your image and to really bolster it and to give a wow factor from the image that's there because it's already a great image. How can we make it even better? And so when you're considering some of these products that we have, here are just some things to consider. When it comes to canvas, you're going to notice that there is a certain warmth because it's not a bright white per se. It's more of a neutral white canvas to really mimic what you see when it's traditional art printed on or rather painted on canvas. They usually work with a neutral white background as opposed to something that would be considered bright white. It also adds a little bit of texture, which if you've ever seen canvas in person, you'll notice that it has a naturally woven texture. And that woven texture also translates for us when we print on our canvas here at Lumaprints. There's going to be a very subtle but noticeable woven texture, especially when you look at it closely. And so keep this in mind, especially if you work out of small images, for example. The woven texture can be apparent and be very strong if your image is small, for example. If you work out of big images, you tend to be able to get away with it or it's not as noticeable. But just keep in mind that there is texture and also almost an overcast of a neutral white as opposed to a bright white, which will show your image more accurately. And then moving on, we have fine art paper. And as you know, we have several types of papers here at Lumaprints, and they're all varying types. And it's a general good, safe place to start with because it has pretty good detailing and it's great for photography and intricate designs. I also think it lends itself well to digital designs as well, but it's not limited for digital designs. It covers a lot of other items. But we offer 7 types of paper, and they all vary between matte and glossy. And there's going to be ones with heavy texture, ones with no texture. And we could cover more about that. But for example, our cold press is pretty close to what watercolor paper is. And we also have something called archival matte, our most popular paper, which is a flat, bright white image. So if you're looking for something that has a very nice, stark white color for your image, then I definitely highly suggest the archival matte. And if not, the semi-glossy, which is also a bright white, it's just going to have a glossy sheen to it as well. As for metal prints, I think this one is probably one of the bolder choices, but it's also a really strong choice if your art lends to it or other digital pieces. I like it for when you work with neons and bright colors. We also offer it in glossy silver. So if you have images that lend themselves really well to metallics, such as car illustrations or anything that's very technology heavy or focused or metal focused, then of course the metal and the glossy silver will be great choices. And as for foam mounted, this is just one of the options you want to offer if you want to still offer something that is solid and, not just a piece of paper. Foam mounted is a great option as well. We also have other mediums as well, such as fine art paper prints under framed and with plexiglass. So that's an option as well. And then we also offer peel and sticks as well. So keep those in mind as you decide which medium you want to choose. And I will say that matching your art style to the right medium is honestly just going to bolster the look and feel of your image once it is in physical form. The great thing about having a physical print of your digital art is that there's another creative process when it comes to your art. And that is how can you execute it physically and how will it look best once it's in a physical form and your customers can, own that piece of art and not just see it on their screen. And, a question that we often get, like I discussed in the beginning, why do the colors look so different on screen versus what you see in print? And honestly, it can boil down to how our computers also have their own color language, if you will, and colors have these slight nuances to them. even per person, a person may look at a color and they might think that this is a bright red, where someone might think it's a more of a muted red. And as honestly, there's so many nuances to color that we could do a whole topic on it, but it is very technical. And I just want to cover the basis of how to make sure your digital images look good for print. And one of the ways you can do that is one, calibrate your monitor, and also just double check for brightness and contrast before you export your image for printing. Um, if you are looking for a muted image for your or image presentation, then for sure don't hesitate to like look at your image and make sure it has those subtle hues. But if you are looking for something that is bright and saturated, then just ensure that what you're seeing on your computer screen does um, look bright enough that it will look good then once printed, because sometimes people think they're going to have a really bright image when they see it on their computer screen and then it's printed, and then they notice like, oh, it's a bit more lackluster, it's not as saturated. And so just make sure that you're looking at your colors properly, taking a little bit of time out of your day to just ensure that when you look at your image on your monitor, again, with lower brightness and making sure your monitor is calibrated, you can then see like, okay, is it going to be bright when I move over into the printing? And honestly, as you print more and more, you're going to become more familiar with your own computer's color space as well as how it's going to translate into the printed format. And this is where I highly suggest, utilizing samples of your images. Don't be afraid to order a couple 4x6s or print some samples out at 8x10s, just so you can do a quick review and think, is my image one to one from what I see on my computer screen versus what I see once printed. And as printers ourselves, we understand how important that is, because as we need to print images also here at Lumaprints, we also want to make sure that what we see on our screen translates well into what we see that comes out of the printer. So um, we kind of have a familiarity with our own monitors as well and know there are monitors and how, okay, I work out of a calibrated monitor, sure, but I notice that it tends to wane a little bit more on the blue side, so I have to account for that. So by virtue of having some at least physical samples, you can kind of figure out how you can calibrate your monitor as well to see what values you need to change up to make sure that you're seeing your image as accurately as possible on your computer screen versus what it's going to be printed. And, I kind of talked about this already, so avoid the oversaturation, or in this case, I often find that people tend to think their images are a lot brighter than they are. Just again, keep in mind that saturation and contrast and brightness are all factors that you need to consider. And now we can go more into framing and mounting for your images. This is again just to bolster the look and appearance of your digital artwork, and just kind of a quick rundown of what we offer for our frames. We offer minimal black frames for almost all our products, for our paper and canvas products rather, and that will offer a very modern and sleek look, and something I highly suggest for most digital art prints if they're more on the modern side. We offer also gold and ornate stylings for our frames as well for the 0.75 canvas and for paper art prints. And this is great if you tend to wane into more of a dramatical or very ornate type of art that has all those, florals or feminine looks, or just, more detailed items. And then, of course, if you're looking for something to lend itself to a rustic feel, then we do offer rustic woods for our 0.75 canvas and our paper prints. So that's a pretty quick rundown. Even if you yourself don't have it for your home, think about your customer and what they would like to see, not only in their home with the image, but also is it compatible with what you tend to see your customers buy elsewhere. So this does require a little bit of research on your end, but I'm sure that with the images that you have, you can probably find a very strong suit for your image and something that worth looking into. And just to summarize some of our items here in general, the most common thing that we notice here at Lumaprints is that people often print in low resolution, and it's because they probably have the image from their online site and they save it as is, and then they try to print it. Honestly, most items or most images you find online are not going to be 100, 200 DPI, 300 DPI. They're going to be made and compressed for online spaces. So you just have to ensure that your resolution on your image is as good as it can be. Using the ruler test that I showed you early on, just ensure that even if your image is of high resolution and high dimensions, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be 100% something that is going to be accurate to those specs. So high resolution doesn't always equate to high quality. Cropping in itself, you don't want to crop some integral parts of your image. And so knowing your aspect ratios is heavily important. We kind of talked about this in a previous webinar, but to quickly summarize it, if you look at your image's dimensions, you can figure out roughly what the aspect ratio is going to be. So say something is 2400 by 3600, thus, you know that it could probably translate well into a 24 by 36 and so on and so forth. Those are just some quick tips, but I know that there's a bit more nuances to it. But the last thing you want to do is overtly stretch or overtly crop your image. So make sure that you tend to stay within its aspect ratio for your original image when you do decide to print it out. To avoid, cropping out the details and also to prevent it from not looking the best it can be if it's missing those key details on the sides. And then some things you want to avoid is colors looking too dark for what they are or even too bright for what they are. I think when you work out of some painting, you probably have a good idea of your values and things of the sort. Just make sure that once you're done with your digital image, it has the look and feel you are ready to have printed after you export it. And is this like the look and feel you want to give? Again, review your monitor and just check for that before you do so. And hence the importance of a final preprint check. And for us at Lumaprints, the way you can feel confident and using us for your digital prints is that we use a lot of items that lend themselves perfectly well to not only those who decide to digitize their physical works, but those who work out of digital spaces or digital programs to make their artwork. We use museum grade materials, so that means items that will last for years and years and years. And we offer durable solid wood frames as well as stretcher bars. We use archival inks as well that help bolster the longevity of your art prints. And with that as well, most of our paper, if not all, are all archival. And by archival as well, that means there's no acid in our paper, and that will allow for itself to not deteriorate over time. So we have really strong prints for that reason, and it's because they last for a long time and they're printed very well with our archival Epson inks. We make the process relatively easy for you to review to see. For example, we'll let you know if something is too low resolution to be printed, as well as ensuring that when you are looking at the image preview for the dimensions, you can then change the image to see if you do want it cropped or if you do want to readjust your dimensions so it's not cropped. So we offer an image preview on our website during checkout process so you can see what the best appearance of your image is going to be like and preview it. We also offer secure packaging and smooth fulfillment. So with that being said, we put corners on canvas and frame canvas, and we also add some necessary padding if it's needed. For heavier images, we go ahead and do the extra mile with a lot more padding as well, because we know the heavier it is, the harder it falls. So it's going to need that extra padding, as well as offering it in very nice, tight packaging so it's not slipping and sliding within the box itself, which can lend itself to being damaged if it's in a loose box, for example. Ultimately, we always look for 100% customer satisfaction, and we want to work with you to make sure your images are printed in high quality. And so this webinar in of itself is kind of to help you guys be able to feel confident in your print before you turn it into us so we can ensure that it is the best print possible for you and your customers. And with that, we also, something that makes us kind of unique is that we do offer custom sizing, and that's because we do all our stretching and all our framing in-house. We don't work out of pre-furbished framing, and so when you see your image go in a frame or it is stretched on canvas, we cut those pieces of woods, we cut that frame, we put it together here in-house to allow for custom sizing. And so these are just small things that add up to hopefully being the best print partner we can be for you guys. And with that all being said, I hope that this webinar was useful for you. I do have some questions that people have asked from the Google form, so I'll go ahead and address those. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Okay, and so the first question was just someone asking simply, how do I locate your videos on YouTube? I won't be able to attend your webinars. And just to give you guys a kind of like a rundown of what we do, we usually run these webinars live on Thursdays, and then around the next following days or so, around, between Friday and Monday, we usually upload the videos there onto YouTube. That just allows for us to edit and download and do what we need to for the video and then upload it, of course, onto YouTube as well. So you usually find these afterwards after a couple days. So keep a lookout if you ever, like, for example, if you came in late to this webinar, you're more than welcome to then check it out again early next week. So if you're interested in that, or if you think you'll forget, then feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube and ring the bell for notifications. And then someone has asked, I've been unsuccessful thus far at finding an online printing service that will create professional quality prints of my art. I'm wanting something textured and weighted, very low gloss, and can you help me out with that? And so this person seems to be interested in our art and our products. And luckily with our paper prints, we have great options. And also with our canvas, we have great options. Just note that a lot of customers tend to come to us after they looked around and did some online shopping for their art and see who their partner is going to be. One of the things that our customers love about us is not only the value of our arts, since we price pretty competitively, but also the quality of our art, because we do work out of genuine Epson printers, and we use Epson inks, and we use high quality grade materials. Um, the best way I can describe us is that we work as though we are a photo studio or a printing studio, but we offer the fulfillment of what you see for large scale retailers or large scale fulfillment centers. We just have two locations here in California. One location here in California and one location in Kentucky. So two locations here in the US, and we service them, our US customers here. And just because even if we were to offset our work elsewhere, what allows us to be so great is that we look at our art and we have our two sites that are just highly monitored, always calibrated, always taken care of, and we put that care into our products and into our service, and it hopefully reflects into what your customer sees. So for us, we are always trying to excel at what we can as printing partners for you in your store. As for what image or what material you would like to see your image printed on, if you're looking for something textured, weighted, and low gloss, I either suggest the matte canvas or optionally the Somerset velvet or the cold press fine art paper. Those three options are great options you can go for if you're looking for something that is low gloss, textured, and weighted. So those are my suggestions. Another customer asked, when I upscale, I'm left with jagged edges and problems with hair, for example. Can you share about bicubic smoothers or other remedies? What effect does upscaling have on the sizing equation? Now, this is a really good question and something a little bit technical. If this is an image you made yourself, then consider looking at the nuances of anti-aliasing, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But making sure that when you are drawing and are producing your art, you are making sure that your pens and your image are working out of anti-aliasing. And the reason why you want to do that is that it's going to be the difference between jagged edges and a more subtle transition of your lines. And so look at your pens that you're working out of, and if you notice that the anti-aliasing is off, turn it on. You'll notice a difference. And when you do decide to upscale and you notice these jagged edges, that just might have to do with the image quality. So even if you're not the producer of this image, say you work with artists to produce images and you're trying to upload these for your store, um, keep in mind that if you're working out of a low resolution image, you can only upscale so much. We also work out of upscaling images if it's needed for some low quality resolution images, and sometimes it works, but there is a percentage of times that it does not work. And that's just because if you have a low quality image and it gets stretched out, and even with the technology that we have today, it's not always going to be successful. What I've seen sometimes is that if the image is not high quality enough and it's upscaled, it'll end up crunchier than the original, or it'll add texture that wasn't originally there. So there is just some images that you need to have a strong base to start with. And if you don't have that, then unfortunately it will not be compatible for printing. So acknowledge that there are just going to be some images that cannot be printed if you don't have the high quality base for it. And so hopefully I answer your question. I think that upscaling is an interesting topic in of itself, but you just want to be very careful because it doesn't always mean that it's going to give you a high quality image, as the rendering process can honestly lead your image to be really good and improve and be print ready, or it can make it look a little bit more, unfortunately, worse. So keep that in mind when you're upscaling your images. Another person asked if their image file is too large to send to us, that is, it exceeds the 100 megabytes. Um, if I were to send it with WeTransfer, how do I know it is received? Luckily, we have a great customer service team, and I know that when you start working out really big dimensions for images, these are going to be huge images that are going to take up a lot of space, and so they might exceed that 100 megabyte. So what you want to do is place in a placeholder, whether that's typing a placeholder onto a white, white canvas or white image, and then uploading that and proceeding to leave an instruction saying that I'm sending you the WeTransfer of this image. Um, and then from there, what you want to do is email us the WeTransfer link to our customer service line or customer service email with the order number. So it's important to place in the order first. Use the order number so the customer service team could then associate your image to your order. We've been doing this for customers for years now, so we're pretty on top of it. And we acknowledge that there are going to be times where your image is just too big for us to take on online. So the WeTransfer and link to your image is something we're very aware of and we're trained for. So rest assured that whenever you need to do so, we are ready for that, and we understand that that happens sometimes when you're working with big images. So hopefully that answers your question. I am opening up the floor to other questions too. If you guys want to unmute yourselves or you want to ask questions in the chat, feel free to do so. If not, while I wait for anyone to type in or unmute themselves, something that I want to announce that I announced at the beginning, but in case you came in later, I just want to let you guys know that sometime between September and October, we would like to have people submit their websites to us so we can then offer them feedback and also review any parts that can be improved on, as well as highlighting some strong points as well of your website. So if you're interested as a Lumaprints customer to have us review your website during a webinar, feel free to submit it to us at hello@lumaprints.com with your email that you use for your business at Lumaprints. So that way we can ensure and verify that the website you're sharing with us is your website. Um, and I will send out a Google form later for probably the next week's webinar. So be a lookout for that link too if you rather do it via link. And then just note that this is a little thing that we want to do for our customers because I acknowledge that, having a second opinion is very useful and you might not have that type of second opinion yourself. So we want to provide that for our customers as well as offer our expertise since many of us are pretty knowledgeable and for me, I've been reviewing websites for a while, as in I like to just see what makes a website stronger. And someone who has ran a website, just looking at things like titles, image previews, how to navigate your website, menus, and things like that. All these small little things that we can offer suggestions for, we want to be able to not only share it for the customer who's interested in presenting this, but also offer advice for those who are witnessing and is part of the audience, seeing what feedback we're offering for our customers. So in turn, you can utilize that feedback for your own store. But if that's something of interest, again, email us at hello@lumaprints.com. For now, I don't see any comments or any messages, so I don't think there's going to be any questions. If so, we're good to end the webinar here. But if you still want to ask your question, I will end the webinar, but I'll keep the chat open for a little bit longer in case you want to send a message to me, and I'll be able to come back on and answer your question. But we can end it here for now. Thank you guys for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.